find a problem that's important to fix it in some way that is sort of like nice, crisp, easy, and elegant, and then don't create new problems for your customer.
Welcome to Latinx in Power, a podcast hosted by Thaisa Fernandes.
Welcome to Latinx in Power. Today, we are talking with Sandra Shpilberg. Sandra is a successful entrepreneur and executive in the biopharmaceutical industry. She's the co-founder and CEO of Adnexi. Sandra has also founded and built another successful healthcare company called Seeker Health. I'm so excited with this conversation, Sandra. Welcome to the Latinx in Power.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Amazing. In this episode, we'll talk more about Sandra's journey as an entrepreneur and how she became involved in the healthcare industry. She'll also talk more about how she incorporates her passion for inner discovery and mindset hacking into her work. So exciting. So Sandra, what does it mean to be a Latina for you?
So let's start from the beginning. I was born and raised in Uruguay, which is one of the lesser known countries in Latin America, but what a treasure it is. Life in Uruguay was quite happy and peaceful. And my grandparents were actually Polish and Romanian, and they escaped the Second World War. And Uruguay was one of the countries that welcomed them, not only with open arms, but also with amazing beaches and delicious food and great community. So I lived in Uruguay until I was 16. And then at the age of 16, our papers came through to come to the United States. And I immigrated with my mom and my dad and my brothers to Brooklyn, New York. So in terms of being a Latina, Uruguay has definitely been the place and will always be the place that I call home with a capital H.
Amazing. I love Uruguay and I love to get to know more your story. That's incredible. And how do you feel connected with the Latinx community?
Yeah, I mean, I speak Spanish. That's still my first language, right? English is my second or third language. And I love, many of the foods. I visit Uruguay often and some of the other Latin American countries. And in general, when it's come to business, I've always felt very comfortable in the global sense, right? That, we come from different countries, we speak different languages, but, our business and healthcare and everything that we do should be able to transcend all of that.
Mm-hmm. So in this past seasons, we have been enjoying talking with entrepreneurs, and myself, I'm learning a lot with them and feeling very inspired. So I'd love to hear from you if you can tell more about your journey as an entrepreneur and how you became involved in the healthcare industry.
Yeah, so I actually started my career on Wall Street, working in financial control. I started accounting in college, and it seemed like the type of career where you could definitely have a job. And as an immigrant, that's what I needed. I needed to definitely have a job after I graduated. So I started my career in financial control on Wall Street, but then very quickly, I realized that I wanted to be working in an area where there was really high utility to whatever products or services we were working with. And that is how I became very interested in healthcare, right? Usually in healthcare, the person that's on the other side of receiving that product or service really needs them. They want to heal, right? They want to get better. And so I went to get my MBA at Wharton. And there, during my internship, I decided to pursue this interest in healthcare and interned at Genentech. Right? Genentech, sort of the mother of all biotech companies. I came out here to San Francisco, interned at Genentech, and confirmed that this was a completely viable and interesting and meaningful career where you could work on the business side of the healthcare sector, right? I would have perhaps loved to be a doctor in another lifetime, but honestly, as an immigrant, that really wasn't a career that I could sustain myself in. So this was a really good opportunity to still work in healthcare, but work on the business side and bring my business acumen to whatever activities were taking place in healthcare. So I interned at Genentech. And then after I graduated from Wharton, I went to work at Centocor, which was a biotech company owned by Johnson & Johnson, worked there for a few years. Then I moved on to work at BioMarin, and I spent 9 years at BioMarin. So that was a very foundational time in my career, had the opportunity to launch 2 different new treatments for rare diseases and advance another treatment from phase 2 to phase 3. So as I was working in these areas, primarily bringing first to market treatments to patients with rare diseases, I noticed that the industry was facing certain problems, right? And these were big, uncommon problems for the industry. Clinical trials were difficult to enroll. Finding who the right physicians were to engage with in terms of a strategic relationship for the company was always something that was very important. And so my first entrepreneurial leap was in 2015. And in 2015, I decided to start Seeker Health, which was my first company. Seeker Health was going to address a very specific problem in the industry, which was finding patients for clinical trials, right? Clinical trials are the basic engine that moves innovation forward in biotechnology, right? All the biotechnology companies need to do a clinical trial. That clinical trial needs to be enrolled with patients. Those patients are sometimes hard to find, and that enrollment timeline tends to be long. And so what I decided was to start Seeker Health and leverage more of what was then nascent social media, digital media, advertising, software to bring a solution to the market. And that company took off. Things went really well. And I sold the company in 2018 to Eversana. And then after having done that, I decided, okay, well, let me tackle another problem in the healthcare industry. And that's when I decided to start my second company, which is Adnexi, which I started in 2020.
Incredible. You seem a very strategic person that you're like trying to figure out what was possible in a combination, what you like to do in a problem that you identified. How is this process for you? It was something that you built over time, or do you feel that it came like naturally being strategic and finding solutions?
Yeah, I think in my last few jobs in industry, right, at biotech companies, so that was Nor Therapeutics and BioMarin, I really got a chance to see the extent to which some of these problems were impacting the company, right? If you can't find the patients for your clinical trial fast enough, it means that the company is spending a lot of time and equivalently a lot of money staying open until these patients are found. In the meantime, the patients are actually desperate to try something new in many of these cases when they have a rare disease for which there really is no other treatment. So I think, the strategy for me really came around finding a problem that was interesting to solve and then, working to incorporate some new technologies, something new that was happening in the industry and bring that as a possible solution to that problem.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. And what inspired you to start the Adnexi, and what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced building the company?
So similarly with Adnexi, we're also trying to solve a big problem in the biopharmaceutical space, which is that when companies develop a new medicine and commercialize that new medicine, they need to build relationships with the right type of what we call key opinion leaders. These are generally doctors and scientists who have a lot of experience in the disease and become really important relationships for the company to have throughout the entire life cycle. So I recall when I was earlier in my career, many times we would find these people really like pen and paper, right? Like set up an Excel spreadsheet and go do some research and find them. And so what we built with Adnexi is really an engine, a platform that is algorithmically getting a lot of the information that we need to process in order to be able to sort and rank who are the scientists and the researchers that can contribute the most when it comes to a relationship with biopharma. So Adnexi provides software and services to biopharma companies, primarily to answer questions around who are the key opinion leaders for a specific disease, who are the rising stars in that field, who has most access to diverse patients, who is most influential in a particular disease. And we do this work throughout many different diseases, but again, with a bit of a focus on rare diseases and specialty conditions. And so the second part of your question was around the challenges. So I started this company in March of 2020, right? In March 13 of 2020, the whole country shut down with COVID. So the first 2 years of this company was absolutely during the COVID pandemic, right? And learning how to work in a completely different way, learning to rely primarily on remote work, never meeting a client or a customer in person, doing everything over Zoom. So, I think that has been a challenge, because when I look back at, for example, how quickly we were able to build Seeker Health, the fact that we can meet with our customers in person, we can establish that rapport, right? We can go to conferences where we could present what we were doing and talk to many different people. That really helped us back then with Seeker Health. And I didn't have that available for Adnexi until pretty much the last year. So that has been a very important challenge. I think the other challenge has been really understanding where the market is for Adnexi and where we can find this product market fit, right? And we've had to pivot many different times. Initially we started with a platform that was going to be available to both biopharma and patients. And then we realized that actually we needed to focus, that was too much to bite and too much to maintain and too much to do. And so we decided to actually focus on the biopharma piece, because that was the piece that was eventually going to have the most impact on patients. At the end of the day, if we had biopharma as the client consuming the data and using it to improve their clinical trials and improve their strategies for launching these new treatments for companies. So those are some of the key challenges that we've had.
That's so interesting. I'm learning a lot. This is a totally different world from mine. So, and I'm loving your mindset. That's very, very interesting. And I love that you are also a writer and a speaker. This is amazing. And you talk about topics like inner discovery and mindset hacking. So before we dive into that, do you mind talking more about what is inner discovery and mindset hacking?
Yeah, this has always been an area that is of great interest to me. So let's start with inner discovery. Inner discovery to me, it means going inside of yourself to find out exactly who you are. And this is actually the topic of the second book that I'm writing right now that is titled Inner Power. Hopefully will be out in the world towards the end of this year. And in this book, what I do is begin to divide the self into different layers, right? So there's this outer layer that you see, but this is not really who we truly are, right? This outer layer, it's almost like the raincoat you have to put on to go out into the real world when it's raining, right? It's not the real you. And then there's the body, right? Which has lots of different sensations. And then there's the feelings layer, which is much deeper and much closer to like who we may actually be, because those feelings actually tell us, they give us guidance as to, are we feeling good about this or are we feeling bad? And then finally, under all of those layers, there's an inner self. And that inner self is my belief that is the true you, is the person that really knows who you are, what you want to do in the world, what you already know. You know so much already that you don't need to go learn anywhere else. You know it very deep inside you. So inner discovery has always been a passion of mine. And, I think that practices like meditation, inner journeys, breath work, ecstatic dance, whatever it might be, those are all practices that might help you get deeper into the inner self. And the point of getting into that inner self is really to discover who you truly are, right? If you want to be living a life that feels good and is aligned with where you want to go, with your meaning, with your purpose, then you got to touch into that inner self. Mm-hmm. Then the other piece of it is mindset hacking, which honestly, I used a lot throughout the development of my first company. And I ended up writing my first book, New Startup Mindset, to talk about these mindset shifts that I had to make to get through that first entrepreneurial journey. So mindset hacking is about the fact that you don't need to take your thoughts too seriously. And whatever mindset you have, you could change it, right? So when you're an entrepreneur, it's leap after leap, right? We're doing things we've never done before. We're doing things for the first time. And in order to do that, you sort of have to be okay with the fact that there's uncertainty. You don't know how it's going to work out, but the leap is worth taking. And so that's why you're taking the leap.
Mm-hmm. When you said about don't take your thoughts too seriously, I definitely relate to that. And this reminds me of meditation, right? Because we learn to let the thoughts go. So that's so interesting. And you started to talk a little bit about that, but I'd love to hear more. How do you incorporate those passions into your work as an entrepreneur and CEO?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're creating something from scratch, and that is an activity that kind of takes all aspects of you, right, of a person. And so for me, what I found is that the more that I can be close to who I truly am, and I can be in touch with what my mindset is and whether or not it needs to change, then the better I can show up to build this company, right? If I'm just building this company because, it's just sort of like something in the very, very outer world and it's sort of not connected to my meaning, my purpose, what I enjoy doing, what I'm passionate about doing, a problem that I'm passionate about solving in some particular way, then, the whole thing is unlikely to go as well as it is when people have that connection to the work that you're doing, right? And you can sort of measure that connection to the work when you're showing up to build the company that you want to build, or you're showing up to do the work you want to do. Is it a joyful experience for you? Are you enjoying it? Are you feeling like this is the reason or one of the reasons why you're here, right? For this short lifetime. And if you are, I feel like things are actually, that energy feeds on itself, right? And it becomes more fun, and the output is ideally better.
Definitely. That's so interesting. And when you were describing the inner discovery and you talked about the inner self and all those layers, it seems that it's very hard to access your inner self. And it's something so important, I think, especially as an entrepreneur, to stay true to yourself, because you're quite often building something that was never done before. And there's a lot going on. There's like this investors meeting, funding, the challenge of building something new. And I can definitely see the importance of knowing yourself and staying true to your inner self as well. And as someone with a global background, what do you think about the intersection of healthcare and different cultures around the world?
Yeah, healthcare is delivered very differently across the world, right? We find such incredible disparities across the world in terms of technologies that are available and how care is provided. So even within the US, right, we see huge disparities in health equity based on race, based on ethnicity, based on language. So this is a huge issue. And actually part of what we're doing with Adnexi is we're trying to fix this at the level of the clinical trials and the level of new treatments by understanding who are already physicians that tend to have larger access to diversity patients, whether they're African American, Hispanic, or Asian population. So this is actually one of the products that we offer through the Adnexi platform to be able to identify for a biopharma company who has more access to these diverse patients. Because part of solving the problem of disparity starts with biotech companies enrolling clinical trials with more diverse patients. Right now, clinical trials are very not diverse for the most part, right? It's primarily white people in America who are enrolled in clinical trials, and we need to start to change that. So at Adnexi, we have part of that solution. We have some of the data that is needed to solve that problem. But, as a person who grew up in this culture, I have to tell you, there are some really important barriers to overcome. I often think about my dad, who had a number of chronic conditions. He passed away in 2015. But, one of the things my dad believed was that lemon can cure everything. Right. So if you have a cold, lemon. If you have cancer, lemon. If you have, some kind of rash, lemon. So everything was lemon, lemon, lemon. And so a person like that, like my dad, is going to need quite a bit more education, right? And quite a bit more explanation and handholding to be able to take that leap to say, I am going to participate in a clinical trial studying a medicine which is not approved, but it's available for my condition, which is severe enough for me to have run out of options. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to get done there. About 2 weeks ago, I went to the Health Equity in Clinical Trials conference, and it was actually a really uplifting event in the sense that there are so many companies and so many biopharma companies really devoting a lot of time and a lot of resources to trying to solve this problem and providing more equity when it comes to healthcare.
Incredible. I can definitely see when you were saying about your family, Lemon, I can definitely, when I think about my family, yeah, that's a lot of education that needs to be done. And it's incredible that you're talking about that and thinking about that. So I was wondering, which advice would you give to other aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to find a problem that needs to be solved and then come up with a way to solve the problem in the most full possible way without creating new problems for your customer, right? So I think that's sort of like the formula for a possible good company is find a problem that's important to fix it in some way that is sort of like nice, crisp, easy, and elegant, and then don't create new problems for your customer if they choose to engage in your solution. And the advice would be, the closer you understand the problem, I think the easier it will be to build a solution and a company around that, right? So, many times you do see that some entrepreneurs go into an area they've never worked in before, and they do a great job. That's great. But it is much easier to do a good job if you are in an area that you do have some understanding. So in the examples that I've given you, both Seeker Health and Adnexi, I could have been the customer for the products that I was developing, right? And that is really important because as the customer, if I could put myself a couple of years back when I was the customer, when I was trying to solve this problem from the biopharma side, then I can develop a solution that will likely fit the problem. So that would be my advice. Find the problem, try to solve it as fully as possible without creating new problems, and then try to find this problem as close to what you know as possible, because hopefully you can bring that knowledge and that understanding into the development of the solution.
Incredible. That's a really good advice. I love that. And in this podcast, we are all about sharing stories, sharing advice and insights, and which resource helped you in your journey. It can be anything related to healthcare or not, like anything that helped you.
Two things. One is more general, but I think one of the resources that helped me the most in my journey has been my family and close ones. And I wrote about this in the book that, taking an entrepreneurial leap requires a lot of work, a lot of commitment, a lot of time, sometimes a lot of money. And so having family members and close friends who are very supportive of you during that time is incredibly important, right? So I feel like during the time that I was building my first company, my husband, my kids, my mom, my brothers, everybody was into what I was doing. They were committed to help me. They were understanding that this might be a difficult journey, but that I was committed to it and that they were going to support me. So to the extent possible, definitely surround yourself with close ones that believe in you, right? That want a good outcome for you. And if you have close ones that don't believe in you, then try to keep them as far as possible during this time of creation, because you don't need that energy. You need to be surrounded by people who believe in you, who want to support you, who want you to accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to do. So that's one. The second one is a book that I really like that is titled The Work of Byron Katie. And she's written a couple of different books on this. But what I love about this process called The Work with Byron Katie is that you get to question your thoughts. And we talked a little bit about this earlier today. She has 4 questions that you ask yourself. The first question is it true? So let's say you come up with a thought, right? Like your thought is like, I worked for 3 months and this company is going nowhere, right? Like a negative thought like that. So the first question she wants you to ask is it true? And then the second question, just in case you lied to yourself, is can you absolutely know that this thought is true? And most of the times you're going to start being like, well, maybe not, because maybe in these 3 months, I did start planting the seeds for some things that are going to happen later on. So maybe the company is not going anywhere, but it is going somewhere. I just haven't seen the fruits of that labor. Question 3, how do you react when you believe the thought? Like if I believe the thought of this company is going nowhere, How do I react? Question number 4, who would you be without the thought? Like if you didn't have this thought, this company is going nowhere. I didn't have this thought at all. Who would I be? I would be a much happier person if I didn't have the thought. So I really love this book in the sense that in literally 30 seconds, you can dismantle any negative thought that you have and get some distance from it and choose a new thought that has hopefully a completely different impact.
I love that. That's incredible. And I feel like we maybe as humans, we have this tendency of thinking the thought, it's the reality. And a lot of times the thought is just a thought. And also it can be a fear. It's not like this will happen. It's just a fear. So being able to identify that and talk with yourself about it, that's so interesting. I love that. And Sandra, I wanted to thank you for your time. I learned a lot. I'm feeling very, very inspired. And I'm going to leave those last minutes for you to share anything you want to share and also where we can buy your book.
Yeah, excellent. So my first book is New Startup Mindset, 10 Mindset Shifts to Build the Company of Your Dreams. It's available everywhere you can find books, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, and it's available in all versions, hard copy, paperback, ebook, and Audible. Yeah, so my book is a good place to start. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and would love to connect with anybody who would like to learn more.
Amazing. Thank you so much.